Hello, today my presentation will be on creating value for an organization that has value, or to add to the value of the organization. So the organization that I will be discussing is a nonprofit organization that connects people through free and low cost mental health services for the sake of self-sufficiency and self-preservation. The values of the organization are guided by our hearts and aligned with our head. At this nonprofit organization, they provide individual values and motivations that match those of the organization. As the consultant, I will be giving recommendations and also suggestions for change from an organizational standpoint. The pluses I can add about this organization are the fact that they value diversity and cultural exchange, due to the fact that when people better understand each other's cultures, they are more accepting of differences. I also praise this organization for giving their employees outside resources to develop those skills of tolerance and acceptance of others. This organization prides themselves on offering clients and staff opportunities for taking classes that help one to better understand global cultural awareness. Since this organization is based in the Midwest and helps clients here in the United States and abroad, in Brazil and Asia, there is a cross-cultural component that they also support. This organization is funded by shareholders, donors, and other government subsidies. And the contingency sometimes is that the government subsidies or other funded programs do not always have the funds allotted for such nonprofits. So the funds are limited, and there's, I would say, a lot of competition as it applies to applying for grants and actually allotting those funds for grants to be used for this nonprofit. As the consultant, I attempt to give the client advice from a solid perspective, but also acknowledging that there are flaws in the organizational changes that they have into play. And basically, I can also say that the differences in this organization have to be clarified. For one, roles of a manager versus roles of a leader have to be clearly defined so that staff and those from lower level positions, spanning from higher level positions, that they understand that the two work towards different goals. I think this is the most important, because if this is not clarified, managers will assume they're just leaders, and leaders might assume they are just fitting into managerial roles, and this is not fact. Leaders, in essence, do not exist to order their workers around. Managers usually oversee the team and guide them to a goal. But leaders inspire. Leaders are prepared. And also another big factor that I've also observed with this organization is that there is a lack of women in leadership positions, ranking from low-level employees to high-ranking employees. This is of concern because women of color are not distinctively, or don't have a distinctive place within higher ranked positions. And this is something that I encourage the organization to evaluate and look at deeper. I would like the organization to come up with some type of plan or some type of strategy to implement in recruiting women of color, either Latino, Black women, or women of other cultural or other And so I'm sorry, my voice did get cut off. Another thing I would like to add about managers is the fact that they have a major influence on those they're leading and the followers. And I would also say that the roles of a leader and a manager are most times influenced by our societal and many expectations that many have experienced within the organization or with other organizations. I'm sorry, because the presentation, it keeps skipping and it kind of keeps cutting me off. I apologize for that. More than likely it's my internet connection. But I would just say also again that the roles that are reaffirmed by societal and expectations from either past employers or employers that you have in front of you. I think when you watch anything in the media or other, television shows, YouTube tutorials, etc., there's a certain approach and a certain know-all when it comes to male and female interaction regarding their appearance, their race, their gender. We assume that a man is supposed to behave this way, a woman is supposed to behave this way, and in reality, these roles have no bearance when it comes to leaders. Leaders can be male, women, transgendered, etc. Leaders can span across a range variety, and it's not to be limited. It's very broad. And I think another major issue that is a plus to this organization is that they do help abroad. So they do go outside of the country and allocate resources for funding for Asia and for Brazil. These parts of the world have limited capabilities when it comes to technology and energy resources, and that is something that is clearly being handled and mitigated by those who are of higher rank in the organization. That is one thing that they have stressed, is they would like to come up with alternatives for energy resources abroad. And I really I think this is a stellar example of being available from a global network perspective, and then also showing others that level of maturity when it comes to addressing people from all walks of life and all dialects to help them with their mental health well-being. That is the goal of this organization. This organization wants to help those from any walk of life to become autonomous and to have a level of self-preservation and self-worth that is supported by their mental health. So the organization, as the consultant, as I've been schooled on, is just basically they want to help Midwesterners and those abroad to just really think about their mental health in a different light. Our mental health is very important. It's just as important as our spiritual health, physical health. Our mental health controls a lot. And within society today, I think that is probably the most important component. A lot of times mental health issues are stigmatized. They're not talked about, and in some families it's not even proper to discuss these things. And these are barriers and stigmas that this organization has continued to work through, and I commend them for that. I would also say that it is also an admirable step because this organization has a tolerance for no discrimination or bigotry. They value inclusiveness, different cultures, religions, genders, and sexual orientations. So I would say the way they are approaching that situation is more than admirable. And then I would also like to suggest to them that they utilize exit interviews and Glassdoor reviews as indicators of how inclusive their organization is. They can tell me that their organization is inclusive, but at the same time, is this really validated? And by using these review indicators, this can actually show higher rank and lower rank employees what the client is actually saying about the organizational cultures. And then I would also say take employee relations complaints also from a valid standpoint. This can be a challenge, but I feel that this organization can support these efforts. As I stated, this organization educates their employees and clients on cross-cultural approaches and interaction. And from my standpoint, this is their biggest strength. I understand that within, the fact that women of color aren't represented in this organization as much, I feel that this may also be due to stigma in society and misogynistic roles about men versus women. Just to clarify again, diversity is built on one being vocal and heard, and differences are supported through tenacity and virtue. Diversity efforts shouldn't be viewed as counterproductive, but as constructive, because every voice within this company culture matters. And I can advocate for this company and say that I've saw this represented within meetings, discussions, shareholders meetings, and then also meetings with the board members. The clients in this organization at times come from low socioeconomic status, and this organization provides no or low cost mental health services. This organization also prides themselves in hiring individuals that love to travel and that also have a global knowledge precedence over other potential applicants. This gives them the know-all of knowing their environment, knowing the populations that they are dealing with, and about the barriers that these populations have when, going to seek out mental health services. At times, I can say a hindrance to the organization has been locating resources for both employees and clients. Mental stability and autonomy is the most important. We as the organization and as the consultant for this organization use strategic planning to offer management consulting services in the Midwest. So the whole circumference of this organization is the fact that they fund and get a lot of their funding through Midwest investors, etc. Some funding is done from abroad, but it's very minimal. And so they in turn take those profits and utilize them for events and other resource related material for abroad. And then one thing I always ask the organization and the leaders within the organization are, what important questions are you going to ask as it pertains to, your competitors? Because in this field, you have many facilities and many organizations that are also working towards the same goals. And so the questions that one needs to ask within this organization, or I encourage them to ask, are what will our organization do so that our client chooses us over other mental health facilities? Does our organization thrive on donors or government subsidies? Will we offer case management or other resources to clients? What are the differences or similar issues and challenges from the Midwest and abroad? And are we willing to hire employees that are well known for delivering the most innovative solutions? Our organization has tactics like advertising in Midwestern and global nonprofits quarterly newspapers, and then they also have the 3 largest circulation newspapers in the Midwest for online databases and for other resources for employees to either send out into the community or abroad. And then I also encourage, as part of my recommendation, for the organization leaders to send a letter of endorsement to